Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right. Whew. So my discussion, confident conflict. It seems like it may run counter to our topic of interconnectedness, but it really does answer, I think, an important aspect of how we go about seeking interconnectedness in our lives. Let me start by asking you this question. How many of us here would enjoy having a happy family life? How many of us would love to come home from work and say, boy, I just had a great day today and I can't wait to go back tomorrow? And how many of us would love to say, I have a peaceful life, a life that I don't fear anything? We'll get back to those in a few moments. You know, doesn't it seem like that we live in an upside-down world anymore? I mean, the very things that we're trying to achieve, it seems like they're counterproductive in our lives. For example, we come home from a hard day, as Sandra presented, and one of our responses to that hard day is we go out and we buy something. We try to satiate our desires by padding what it is that we have, and sometimes we don't have the money for what we buy. And then a few weeks later, when that credit card bill comes due, another stressor is introduced into our lives. So all of a sudden, that little event that we tried to use to bring us some happiness didn't work at all. Or how about this? People who strive for peace. I mean, peace is the ultimate ideal, is it not? That's what we all seek. But unfortunately, people who seek peace seek it at their own direction, and they think it should look their own way. And oftentimes that peace that we seek just begins to create further conflict in life. Or even this, how about going into life and saying, I fear nothing? The discussion that I'm talking about, that confident conflict, is not conflict between people, it's conflict within our own lives. The Latin phrase, Amat victoria Curam, really means victory through preparation. Or an even more honest interpretation is victory through pain. And when you look at that concept, you begin to understand something more and more and more about yourself. That if we try to avoid those things that we're afraid of, if we try to block out of our lives those events that we think may occur, but we're just going to hope that they don't and we don't address them, we're only setting ourselves up for failure and catastrophic failure in years to come. Oftentimes, what prevents us from enjoying that great family life or that wonderful job that we have or living that fear-free life is something called fear. We're afraid to address those things that may bring us a sense of pain, may encounter a sense of struggle in our lives, or may demand that we put extra work into it. So the way that we deal with that fear is we just ignore it. And that fear, and I like to say fear is nothing more than false expectations appearing real, that fear then begins to build up in our bodies and in our souls until all of a sudden we can no longer handle it. And we have some type of a catastrophic breakdown. I want to share with you what I mean. It was 23 years ago in April when, as a paramedic, I was working here at Williamsport Hospital. We got dispatched with the city ambulance and fire department for a vehicle accident. A car had gone into the bridge abutment of the bridge here at Market Street. And that was, you know, a little exciting at first, but then as the dispatch went further, we were told that, you know, there was entrapment. We were told that the patient was in grave condition. And those things really get your adrenaline firing, as you can imagine. We roll up on the scene, and sure enough, there is this car head on into the bridge abutment. The person is trapped. I end up having to go through the front window to stick 2 IVs in this guy. I mean, he's really beat up pretty badly. We have to pop the roof off, pull him out, about a 22-minute extrication. As we're getting him into the ambulance attendant slaps me in the chest and he says, "Howard, isn't this your father?" And it was my father. It was my father that I was treating that I didn't realize who it was. And the moment I realized it was him, the moment I attached some type of a personal connection to him, I fell apart. You can imagine. I all of a sudden was worthless. There was nothing I could do. Thank God my partner was there who was able to then pick up for me and continue. And he survived. My dad later succumbed to cancer about 12 years later. But that's one of the events that I share with other public safety people as they're struggling in their job. That's one of the biggest concerns people have. What if I have to treat someone I know? What if I have to address somebody that I love? And that's a big challenge. And so I instruct them that it's an important thing to do. About 22 years later after that incident came this incident. It was Monday after Easter 2009, and my wife and I are at home, and we get a knock on the door, and the ambulance crew is there, the ambulance crew that I served as a chaplain, and we answered the door, and he said, Chaplain, we got a problem. And I said, well, what's going on, Tony? And he said, well, we were dispatched to an accident, but we can't find it, and it's your son's truck that's in the accident. So as we tried to locate it, I finally got a hold of what was going on. We were in State College at the time. The accident our son was in Altoona, 45 miles away. And I was able to make contact with the state trooper, and the state trooper said, yes, he's been in a bad car accident, but they got him out, and he's on his way to the hospital. So my wife and I started to the hospital. We get there, and in the ER, they say, oh, your son's over in CAT scan. Okay, that's another good sign. We walk over to CAT scan, and as we get there, they're wheeling our son out of the litter, and the trauma surgeon just simply says, I'm sorry, your son's brain dead. That's what greeted us that morning. And it literally knocked us off of our feet. But we were able to recover quite quickly. Why? Because one of the great things that the military does is they instruct their people how to have that conversation with their parents. And so before our son would deploy, we would get together on the back porch and do the manly thing. We would have a little glass of brandy, and we would smoke a cigar, and we would talk about life issues. But then he would be very honest, and he'd say, Dad, look, if something happens and I don't come home, don't keep me alive. Don't do anything. I know where I'm going. I know we'll see each other later. That's a bit of our faith involved. And just take what organs you need and give them to other people. So we were able to do that. And we were able to rejoice in the fact that somebody or quite a few other lives were touched by his death. But I began to examine what were the differences in my reaction between when my father was in his accident and when our son had his accident. And this is what I realized. It was the Amat Victoria Curam, the preparation that's got to be involved in dealing with these things. Now, the one thing that I think prevents this from happening is who really wants to sit down here and have a conversation with their family and say, okay, what do you want me to do when you die? Well, here's what I want you to do when I die. But yet, it's an invaluable gift to give people. And it doesn't have to be around death. It can be around anything that challenges you, anything that causes a little bit of fear within you, that you address it and you say, okay, what do I need to do in order to overcome it? Going back to those 3 questions that I first asked when we got here, how many of you would love to have that ultimate family life, would love to have that job, would love to live a fear-free life? You can do those because it's up to you. So if you want to have that good family life, take stock of what it is that means a good family life to you. Write it down and then see where there are some disjointure in your life that's not matching up. How about that job? Some of us get concerned. We don't want to go into a dead-end job, a job that's going to give us no professional growth or no sense of growth at all. Well, then let's make sure we look at a job where we feel we are called to do that job, that we don't get tied into, the money that's there, because that pretty soon is not going to be enough to keep us happy. And this is all structured around happiness. Psychologists used to believe that if we had a good job, if we had a good family, if we made the money that we needed to, we would be happy. But in this upside down world, that's wrong. It's happiness that brings about those affects. It's happiness that brings about our contentment with our life. And when we're happy, when we're connected to ourselves, it is then that we can begin to become interconnected to one another. that we can start to say, I can associate with you, I can understand where you're at. Let's help each other, let's partner on this. And I think that wonderful topic of interconnectedness is so vitally important to our community, especially today, to that growing community that talks about our dependence on one another. A relationship and a realization knowing that we can be partners with one another even though we may not totally see eye to eye on principles, even though we may come from different political or religious or socioeconomic backgrounds, whatever it may be. Where is that common point between us upon which then we can build? Interconnectedness is the key to peace, and peace is the key to lifelong happiness. Thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.